Alright guys, welcome back and welcome to the first episode of the Madden 19 Chiefs franchise. And first off, I want to apologize for it taking this long to get started. I've been doing a lot of slider testing and I've made it through 2 seasons of a test CFM and probably played around 60 or so games total now. And there's been a few times where I felt like things were in a good spot and I was ready to start, but then really frustrating issues would pop up. And overall, Madden 19 has kind of felt like a step back when it comes to the user versus CPU experience. But I'll get into some of that when I go through the sliders, but that's why it's taken this long. But I decided to just say screw it and start anyway and basically just try to figure out things along the way. So we're just going to jump right into things here, and we'll be doing a cloud franchise, and I'm going to be using a custom roster, which is basically just going to be the official roster update from week 2 with a few changes. I put Josh Gordon on the Patriots and switched out kickers for the Vikings and Browns, but the main reason is just so that I can have accurate rosters as possible for my team. I was going to use the week 1 starting point, but that's missing a couple of guys from the Chiefs opening day 53-man roster, and then almost their entire practice squad is missing as well, so I had to take this route instead. And then obviously we're going to be going with the Chiefs, and then we're going to change our role to the owner and take over as Clark Hunt, and this is just so we're more of a GM and can hire or fire the head coach if need be, and then it will also allow Andy Reid to retire if he so chooses. And with that, I'm going to run you through the league settings real quick, starting with skill level, which is going to be all Madden. Game speed will be normal, and game style will of course be simulation. Salary cap on, relocation settings normal, injury, pre-existing injury, and practice squad stealing are all on of course. And then I'm going to turn my player progression frequency from weekly to the end of the season, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I feel like it's a bit more realistic, and the new progression system is actually much better equipped to handle this type of progression than Madden 18's progression system. Basically what I'm trying to emulate is players getting better more so in the off season rather than during the season, which is something that, like I said, I feel is a bit more realistic and will also allow players to see bigger jumps season to season rather than gradual throughout the season. Quarter length is 15 minutes with the accelerated clock set to 15 seconds, and this is going to give me anywhere from 120 to 130 plays per game, which is exactly where I'm looking to be. Season experience will be customized, but the only change I'm going to make here is turning weekly training to auto. Similar to the Madden 18 franchise, practice isn't something that I want to do, and I'm pretty sure the CPU still only gets bronze for their players, so I don't want to be at any kind of unfair advantage there either. Everything else, however, will be set to manual, and I'll be controlling all of that. And then lastly, for team settings, all 3 of these will be off, as I don't need tutorial pop-ups, my players auto progressing, or my roster being filled without my consent. With that, we're going to be moving on to the gameplay sliders, and just to preface here, please don't trust me on these. Like I said before, I've done a lot of testing and played a lot of games, and no matter what settings I've been on or what slider sets I've been using, I've ran into a lot of issues. Some that should be able to be fixed with sliders and some that can't, but basically what I did with these was I started from a complete default of all 50s and then made very basic changes, and I've gotten decent results from them, but I can't promise anything, and I don't even know how these are going to play out over the course of this season. But I'm just going to run through each of them here and give an explanation as to why things are the way they are, starting with quarterback accuracy. Default 50 for the user and then 40 for the CPU, just to try and limit some of that robo QB that can happen at times and try to mix in some inaccuracies with the pass deflections. I didn't change the user accuracy because on all Madden I haven't had much of an issue with getting realistic completion percentages, and with as tight as all Madden defense is this year, I didn't really feel like it was necessary either. Moving to the pass blocking, where I have the user set at 75 and then the CPU at 50. Now 75 is obviously really high, but if you watch my last video where I went into a bunch of issues with the offensive line and blocking in general, you might understand why it's like that. Unfortunately though, I could have this slider at 100 and it's not going to fix any of those issues that I mentioned, but the reason why this is at 75 is to try and limit the so-called insta-sheds from the middle of the road type players. On default, I just see way too many times where average interior linemen who aren't pass rushers at all end up looking like Aaron Donald all game, just instantly throwing guys around. And when you pair things like that with all of the issues already present, like linemen not picking up blitzes, linemen not blocking guys right in front of them, RBs not doing anything in protection, as well as things like the quarterback getting sucked into sack animations and how long it takes receivers to get into routes, that's the reason why that's going to be so high. You're still still going to see those elite guys like Bosa and Mack wreaking havoc, but you won't see it as much from those average linemen. And then the CPU is at default because anytime I've had it any lower, I started getting 4 and 5 sacks per game, and I don't like when that's the case. I'll live with the times where the quarterback has a ton of time to throw just to keep those sack numbers in a realistic range. That was a huge issue I had with Madden 18, and in the one season of my franchise in Madden 18, you guys saw that I broke the sack record with Justin Houston, as well as led the league in sacks. Moving to the run game, I have user run blocking at 60 and CPU run blocking at 65. This is probably the biggest issue with Madden 19 currently, and that's getting any kind of running game on either side. It's easier to create for the user, but the CPU is just absolutely terrible, and it's been hard for me to get the CPU over even 2 yards per carry most of the time. I had run blocking at 70, but went back to 65 just because at 70 there were too many times where guys would just completely get locked on blocks and never come off, and the result was that everything would either be basically a tackle for loss or a run where the back was untouched until he got to the safeties. And the CPU run game in general just has a ton of issues, mainly with how ball carriers react and use their spin and juke moves, and then you have all the issues with line play and blocking playing into that as well. And I just haven't had any success at all getting the CPU to be able to run the ball without things looking completely unrealistic. For fumbles, I have the user at 60 for 2 reasons, one being the amount of hit sticks that the CPU gets on all Madden, and the other is the quarterback fumbles. I'm just trying to limit those and keep those in a realistic area. As for the CPU, I kept them at 50, and even on that they will hardly ever fumble, but there have been times where I'll get a couple of fumbles in a game, and I will get fumbles here and there, but they're definitely not that common, and for the most part I'd rather have less turnovers than too many turnovers. Shifting to pass defense, and you're going to notice here that there's only one change on both sides, and that's going to be to interceptions. Pass defense is really good this year, and it's one of my favorite parts of the game and favorite improvements from Madden 18. However, with that, the one thing that I've noticed is that there's just a ton of warping and psychic DBs when it comes to the CPU, which is why their interceptions are going to be dropped down to 30. I've gotten better at not throwing picks than I was at release, but there's still just far too many times, in my opinion, where you throw passes that should at the very worst be knocked down, but the defender is able to pick them off. This applies to the user as well, which is why the user interceptions are at 25, but the psychic DB and the warping isn't going to be as common for the user as it is for the CPU, but the AI quarterbacks are going to make far significantly more dumb throws. One of the biggest pain points for me with Madden 19 is that the defense is a lot better and a lot smarter, but the quarterback AI hasn't really improved to go along with that, so the CPU will still make some absurdly dumb throws as well as idiotic play calls towards the end of games, and I want to cut down on games where I end up with a ton of picks or get interceptions in situations where the CPU should just be running the ball to run out the clock because of things like that. Like I said before, I would much rather drop a bunch of picks and have less turnovers than have every game be a Madden ball turnover fest. And then lastly, to the run defense, where I have tackling at 45 for the user and 40 for the CPU. This is just to create some more missed tackles, which aren't very common at 50, as well as to try and help the running game a bit. No changes to special team sliders, as the ones in CFM only apply to the user, so nothing really to change there. So that's what I have for that. I don't really know how things are going to turn out, but I'm hoping to at least get good games out of them. But like I said before, there's a lot of issues that are going to take more than sliders to fix, so if you're looking for sliders that are going to do that, these might be them, but I honestly have no clue, and I am not very confident that they are. But with that, we're going to move to the game options, where I have injuries set to 20, and depending on how the season goes, I might bump that up to 25. Fatigue and speed threshold will both be at the default of 50. Moving to the gameplay helpers, I will have auto flip defensive play on, but everything beyond that will be off or on manual in case of the ball carrier moves. And then lastly, the coin toss is set to receive, simply because if you set it to kick, you'll never get the ball first because all the other teams are defaulted to receive for their first choice. But moving on to the penalty sliders, and this is something that I've thought a lot about, and I was thinking about just putting these on default, because even with these where they're at, you're just not going to see very many penalties or anywhere close to a realistic amount, which is a real shame when playing on simulation. But the main thing that I worry about is any of the issues that may or may not be caused with gameplay by having these the way they are. But I'm going to stick with them for now just so they're a factor. But again, this is another one of those frustrating issues that I mentioned where you're just not going to get much out of changing the sliders. And then lastly, we have the XP sliders, and I can't can't take 1 ounce of credit for these. All of the credit goes to T-Dog from Operation Sports. And if you guys are interested in seeing his work, I'm definitely going to be linking you to the thread for these in the description. But he's done XP sliders for the last several years now and does a ton of testing with them to make sure that they're good. And so that's what I'll be going with, and I doubt I'll be making any changes over the course of the franchise unless something like this is affected by a patch. But that's going to do it for now. I'm going to have another season preview video coming soon where I'll go through my roster as well as some other things. I was going to do that in this video, but I didn't want things to run too long. But most likely I will upload that the same day that I upload the first game, just so that the next time I upload, you will have a chance to view actual gameplay rather than just preview type videos. But I'm excited to finally get this going. Once again, I apologize for it taking this long, but once the ball gets rolling, there's going to be more stuff coming as well in the form of wish lists and some beyond the blueprint type stuff, so stay tuned for that. If I didn't mention something in this video like auto subs, it likely means that it was left at default. But if you guys have any questions or want to know anything else regarding sliders and settings, let me know and I'll be sure to reply to that in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and are looking forward to this franchise series, and as always, thanks for watching.